Today, we will be taking Jujutsu Kaisen out of their own universe and swapping them into a brand new one. We saw how the Demon Slayers handled Shibuya, so how would the Jujutsu Sorcerers handle the flip side, fighting the top echelon of demons in the Infinity Castle, home of King to all demons, Muzan Kibutsuji. By replacing every Hashira and Demon Slayer MC with the Jujutsu Kaisen characters from the Shinjuku Showdown arc, we will also be doing our best to maintain as much of the integral structure of the original Infinity Castle plot as possible. Who can do it better? Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's get right into it to see. But most importantly, thank you for watching. On the night of Kaguya Ubuyashiki's confrontation with Muzan, everything goes basically the same as the original timeline. The only difference is we'll replace Ubuyashiki with the Director of Jujutsu, the unknown character in charge of all Jujutsu Society that Gege decided to offhandedly mention in a volume extra. All of Jujutsu Society is on high alert after finding out a massive explosion just occurred in the director's home, and the same team that was put together to take on Ryomen Sukuna are the first to arrive on the scene. Muzan would be heavily wounded by the explosion, just in time for Shoko, the Jujutsu doctor of the group, to jump in and inject Muzan with a carefully augmented poison, weakening Muzan immensely. Surrounded by multiple high-level Jujutsu sorcerers, Muzan would have no choice but to retreat. As everyone springs into action, wooden doors would suddenly emerge from underneath everyone, plunging the entire cast into the ever-changing maze of the Infinity Castle, home of Muzan and the remaining Upper Moon demons, trapping all of the Jujutsu sorcerers in a dark abyss with the strongest demons in the Demon Slayer series. We'll be splitting everyone up into groups as the Demon Slayers also get their formation rearranged by the castle. But before the Jujutsu sorcerers encounter the bigger problems, the castle is swarming with hundreds of highly powered up NPC demons. So to save us some time later, how strong exactly would the sorcerers be in the Demon Slayer world? Every Jujutsu Kaisen sorcerer that will be involved in the Infinity Castle situation will have just heavily trained for 1 month in preparation for the battle against Sukuna, guaranteeing each person participating will be a grade 1 sorcerer at the very least, some being borderline to outright special grade rank. In Jujutsu Kaisen terminology, this should mean they have the potential to take down an entire nation with their abilities. With some exceptions, most of these sorcerers are capable of destroying buildings with just their bare hands. There are even people like Itadori Yuji that can demolish large city blocks just by fighting inside urban terrain with Sukuna, putting craters in buildings by casually landing on them or tossing people through skyscrapers like it's nothing. And then there's people like Yuta Okkotsu and Rika Orimoto who can even restrain a powerhouse like Itadori, casually just obliterating stadium entrances or destroying multiple blocks of area with cursed energy blasts. From statements made by the higher-ups about Rika and also canonical feats from special grades like Gojo Satoru or Ryomen Sukuna, it's possible some of the Jujutsu Kaisen heavy hitters could potentially be highballed at destroying small towns. There's also things like Black Flash, a boost in power exponentially to consider. However, not everyone reaches this estimation, and I'll be making any distinctions necessary as we get further into the video. The sorcerers are more than capable of withstanding some of the stronger attacks from Demon Slayer as well. Most of them in Shinjuku Showdown have survived multiple projectile dismantles from Sukuna, an attack that has been shown time and time again to destroy single to multiple buildings alone depending on the output. Itadori Yuji has been tossed through multiple city blocks by a mere punch from Sukuna, and this same level of strength is exponentially increased to the power of 2.5 and still wasn't enough to kill characters on the spot like Maki Zenin, Choso, or even Loru, an at best grade 1 level sorcerer. Now, all of the NPC demons wandering the Infinity Castle will be at bare minimum lower moon level, confirmed by Gyome as he and Muichiro make their way through the castle, a middle rank of sorts in demon kind, given to the 6 demons just under the 6 upper moons. We didn't get to see much of the lower moons in Demon Slayer due to Muzan executing all of them early on, but specific feats are the Tatami Drum Demon, a former lower moon, displays at best attacks that can carve into building walls and move at the speed of sound. And later, Hashira level Giyu Tomioka also dismantles lower moon 5 Rui like it's nothing. And whether you want to argue Rui was weakened by Tanjiro or not, Giyu did make the fight look easy. This feat is even further backed up by all the Hashira in the original Infinity Castle just carving these NPC demons up in single slashes. And although these demons should be able to regenerate, they aren't powerful enough to survive decapitation. By using Choso's piercing blood attack, which is stated to move faster than the speed of sound, we can guarantee everyone in the Jujutsu Sorcerer pack is at least faster than than that. Maki Zenin can catch a bullet point blank and outpace the previous Mach 3 feat by Curse Spirit Naoya. If the maximum speed of a bullet is Mach 2.5, the minimum speed required to perform that catching action would be Mach 6 to 7, and considering how close the bullet was to Maki, that feat is most likely faster. Now, Itadori Yuji, while not directly showing any hypersonic feats, is able to fight in synchronization with Maki Zenin against Ryomen Sukuna, while she is quote-unquote picking up the pace. Yuji can also stay on top of Sukuna in close quarters combat when the two are fighting one-on-one, and this is the same Sukuna that is able to perception blitz the previously calculated hypersonic Maki Zenin when fully locked in. Considering Curse Spirit Naoya's Mach 3 speed, which is 3 times the speed of sound, this will keep the grade 1 characters like Meimei, Ino, and Choso from really going any higher than what Piercing Blood allows. There are obvious exceptions to this, like the characters I mentioned before, and especially all of the characters that do fight Ryomen Sukuna one-on-one. You also have characters like Hakari Kinji, who have been shown to notice a lightning bolt coming at them. Although he was not able to get out of the way, Hakari's shoulder shifted slightly as to not get headshot by the lightning bolt. And in the anime, Toji Fushiguro, an equivalent to Maki, was also shown noticing lightning attacking him. Now, the manga is much more definitive and doesn't depict this, but considering Hakari's impeccable reaction time is in the manga, if you wanted to argue Hakari's feat should be in play here, that's fair, as either way, we have more than enough information to prove the sorcerers are more than exceptional replacements for the Hashira, for now at least, as the Upper Moon demons are significantly stronger and all have their unique blood demon arts. Speaking of which, as everyone begins taking out the random encounter demons, Maki Zenin, playing the role of Shinobu, would be the first sorcerer to encounter one of these heavy threats, meeting up with Upper Moon 2, Doma. As Maki enters the blood-soaked room, Doma would spring in glee that a woman was the first to find him, and after brief introductions, Maki would swiftly dive into battle with the Upper Moon. Despite Doma's polite attempts at conversation, the emotionless and cold Maki Zenin would see only her goal of eliminating all enemies, not willing to indulge in any of Doma's sly comments or psychopathic rants. Compared to the previous demons we just talked about, the Upper Moons definitely represent another echelon of strength. Even at the beginning of their ranks, Upper Moon 6 Daki was able to decimate an entire city block to ruin with her belt demon art. And although the buildings were still somewhat intact, her older brother Yutaro made sure to finish that job up for her, delivering destruction to multiple city blocks upon his body self-detonating and releasing the maximum power of his blood scythes. A lot of people would argue due to the key panels in the manga and the anime adaptation of Demon Slayer, Yutaro destroyed the entire entertainment district with his blast, and while it does appear to be this way, the idea that buildings from the Taisho era would be as reinforced and durable as buildings from the modern day comes to mind. But again, if you really wanted to argue in specific cases that Demon Slayer is reaching the exact same level as feats as the 200% Hollow Purple or Fuga, I'm sure you could find a way to make that argument. But to further reinforce the power level we'll be using for this video, no Upper Moon demon really recreates a display of power like Yutaro. Upper Moon 4 Zoakuten's giant wood dragons and lightning attacks were only capable of destroying buildings and causing small craters in the earth, so while theoretically each Upper Moon should be stronger than Yutaro's self-destruction, the best feats we really have going forward are Muzan Kibutsuji, the peak of demon kind, casually leveling entire city blocks on his final rampage against the Demon Slayers. And even then, a lot of the village is still standing by the end of it. At most, I would argue the Upper Moons can destroy a town as easily as Rika Orimoto could, if allowed to rampage without any limit or someone stopping them, but probably not all in one single blow. So wherever you really sit on the fence, this still places Upper Moon Doma at more than enough reasonable attack level to rival the sorcerers. Doma's own ultimate attack, Giant Ice Bodhisattva, having more than enough striking strength to recreate Daki's previous city block attack and then some. Unfortunately for Doma, his opponent is Maki Zenin, the girl with no cursed energy, and a heavenly restriction that gives her a body made of steel. Due to being born without access to Jujutsu, Maki's humanity was boosted, putting all 5 of her senses higher than any human in the Jujutsu Kaisen universe, while also endowing her with high physical stats. As stated before, Maki Zenin can at the very least be scaled to hypersonic speed, although based on Jujutsu Kaisen and Demon Slayer's differences in terms of lightning reactions, Doma might be faster. All of the Upper Moons in Demon Slayer, unlike the fodder demon's speed of sound, should be bare minimum hypersonic range. Muzan Kibutsuji is able to move faster than the lower moon's eyes can even perceive, something that is only possible once an object reaches Mach 5 speed. And all of the Hashira should be capable of maintaining this hypersonic speed level as well if we consider this is the lowest speed necessary to compare to Muzan in their final battle. If we then go a step further and take into account Mitsuri Kanroji, the love Hashira's feat of completely moving out of the way from a lightning attack casted by Upper Moon 4, Demon Slayer gets a heck of a lot faster than base Hypersonic. Now, just like Jujutsu Kaisen, there are some contradictions in Demon Slayer's speed scaling, as in the literal same chapter, Mitsuri Kanroji is caught off guard by an attack that moves at the speed of sound, and all the Hashira are barely keeping pace with the Upper Moons in Infinity Castle. This would lead me to believe that the Upper Moons are even faster than people like Maki and Hakari. Jujutsu Kaisen could only notice the lightning bolt, while Demon Slayer actually fully got out of the way. Now, speed isn't everything, and due to Maki being able to survive a Black Flash from Yomen Sukuna, who very clearly surpasses Demon Slayer's maximum output, even without the exponential 2.5 increase from Black Flash, the heavily restricted woman should easily tank physical attacks from the Upper Moon. Maki's attack potential is more than capable of decapitating Doma as well, unlike Shinobu. With the Soul Split Katana, Maki's weapon of choice, a sword that ignores durability completely and can even cut away at a person's soul, Doma definitely would not survive if Maki landed a lethal blow. It's arguable if the soul damage would cause Doma to not regenerate, similar to how it affects sorcerers and curses in JJK. But the Upper Moon is for sure at the disadvantage in close quarters regardless. Doma, however, has his Blood Demon art to rely on, which is a powerful and versatile ice conjuring technique. We've seen Maki be incapacitated by ice before, including another high durability character like Hakari Kinji losing limbs to ice shattering. Unlike Maki though, Hakari can regenerate those arms and legs back. While Maki's durability probably exceeds what Doma can hit her with, she is at risk of being frozen and broken into shards. Piercing icicles or slashes from Doma's fan may not be a threat, but the diamond dust that invades one's lungs and freezes them internally could be. Doma has a large attack range as well that spreads icy winds everywhere, almost freezing Kanao Suyori's eyeballs and other organs upon contact during their initial encounter. Doma is also able to generate up to 6 ice clones of himself, all of which are on a somewhat close power scale to himself. These ice clones are able to hold off both Inosuke Hashibara and Kanao, while Doma stood off to the side, absorbing all the battle data transferred to him by the clones, only losing concentration on them once Shinobu's poison started to take its toll. This puts Maki in a major bind, at least while she's by herself. Maki could easily land a killing blow on Doma if there weren't any obstacles in front of him, considering she could already endure most of his physical strikes, but the element of ice is tricky for close quarter fighters like Maki, especially on the level Doma is manipulating. Maki Zenin, thanks to her heavenly restriction, is gifted with sharpened senses bordering on the lines of precognition, an extra sensory she herself describes as seeing subtle shifts in the air and always knowing where to be at the right time to perform the best possible battle actions. Maki should be able to rely on these supernatural senses to help her avoid the more tricky ice attacks while keeping up a strong offense against Doma. However, it's really the ice clones that will vastly outnumber Maki and put her in a position where she'll be caught off guard by one of these lethal flash freeze attacks, or at the worst, surrounded from all directions with nowhere to escape, which could cost her a limb, serious internal damage, or the worst possibility, her life, if Doma manages to freeze her completely. Now, in the original timeline, this is where Doma would overtake Shinobu and defeat her, devouring her body just in time for her younger sister Kanao to arrive. Instead, in this new path, Maki would be fighting tooth and nail against Doma and his clones, when instead of the duo of Inosuke and Kanao coming to finish the job, the sibling duo of Meimei and Wee would enter the battle. Meimei was a great alternative to Shinobu in the Demon Slayer video, and while Meimei herself wouldn't be too much help in the fight since she can barely be estimated faster than sound, her crows do offer significant help in dealing with Doma's ice clones. Depending on how many crows Meimei brings in with her, Bird Strike is a very strong attack that can decimate the ice clones and keep their attention off of Maki. Even Sukuna needed to dodge Bird Strike. Meimei can also deal devastating blows with her axe to the ice clones, but the real help would come from Wee, whose curse technique allows teleportation. The child probably couldn't survive a single blow, but might be a way for Maki to escape omnidirectional ice attacks. Worst comes to worst, they could even teleport Doma away from the Infinity Castle using Wee as a sacrifice, or teleport Maki out of the fight if she gets a limb frozen to be properly assessed by Shoko back at Jujutsu headquarters, getting sent back into the fray after a quick healing session. While Doma does have unlimited stamina due to being a demon and can continue regenerating any non-decapitative attacks, it will for sure be in Doma's favor to draw out the fight. So really, Maki, the biggest asset in the fight, being able to teleport out of Doma's ice winds and also back home to reset her stamina, is probably their best bet of ever defeating Upper Moon 2. I think overall, this fight is very close. But considering Doma's performance against Shinobu, who could have killed Doma if she was strong enough to land a decapitation, it's not hard to imagine Maki coming out on top, especially with Mei Mei and Wee Wee's help. Maki's cold-hearted nature would always lead her to going right for the kill and wasting no time at all. However, if the fight does become drawn out long enough for Doma to reveal his ice clones, honestly, I think even with Mei Mei and Wee Wee's help, it becomes too much for the team of sorcerers to handle. Wee Wee is not only super weak and at risk of dying immediately, Mei Mei has no stake to stick around in this fight to the very end and lose her only ticket out of the castle with Wee Wee. She's at just as much of a threat to Doma's more tricky ice attacks as Maki is, so take that as you will. But I think the 50-50 extreme diff of this fight means we should go away and focus on something else coming back to this. Rewinding time before Mei Mei and Wee Wee showed up to help Maki, the very next battle in the Infinity Castle lineup would be Zenitsu Agatsuma versus Upper Moon 6 Kaigaku. And the perfect man to replace Zenitsu is the grade 1 sorcerer who avoids responsibility as much as possible, Kusakabe Atsuya, a fellow swordsman who would have been doing his best to lay low in the castle for as long as possible. Unfortunately for Kusakabe, the feeling that someone was watching him hasn't went away since he got here. After taking a big sigh, Kusakabe would hope it's just some low-level demon that's hiding from him because he's too strong. Kaigaku would cockily enter the arena though and introduce himself, and upon discovering Kaigaku's an Upper Moon, Kusakabe would internally die. The grade 1 sorcerer would sigh again. Alright, well, at least I got the weakest one, right? Kusakabe says out loud before Kaigaku's insecure personality would make him shout back in anger, the two swordsmen reaching for their katanas and beginning combat. Although it's true, Kaigaku is the weakest of the Upper Moons, as we've already discussed, this by no means makes him weak. If Kaigaku at all compares to Daki, he should at least be capable of doing large damage with his enhanced thunder breathing attacks, especially considering the blood demon art Kaigaku is now imbued with actually conjures real area of effect slashes empowered with lightning. And because the sorcerers fail to achieve the same range of speed as the Upper Moons, Kaigaku surely is moving at a pace Kusakabe will struggle to keep up with. At the same time, Kaigaku was getting speed blitzed by Zenitsu, so Kaigaku's for sure one of the slowest Upper Moons. The Upper Moon is also casually decapitated and damaged by Zenitsu in their battle, a character who at best is capable of destroying buildings with their level of attack power. This means despite the speed advantage Kaigaku will have over Kusakabe, the demon's neck will be very easy for Kusakabe to dice through. Even without a Nichiren blade, Kusakabe's sword slashes were strong enough to draw blood from a much more durable foe, Ryomen Sukuna, and most famously, Kusakabe's sword blocked Kenjaku's maximum Uzumaki attack, a curse technique that created an enormous crater in the ground and generated more power than Kaigaku was ever shown to be capable of. Each character has their pros and cons, especially considering Kaigaku can launch projectile lightning attacks from multiple directions, although it's unclear if these attacks actually move at the same speed as a lightning bolt. I honestly wouldn't argue with you if you said they did, because the blood demon art may genuinely convert Kaigaku's attacks into pure lightning. However, they are only canonically stated to add a searing burning sensation to his slashes that continues to do damage even after the attack has landed. I believe what gives Kusakabe the potential to win this battle though would be his efficiency with simple domain and being able to extend its barrier range, converting the defensive maneuver into an offensive assault on their opponent. Displayed in Kusakabe's battle with Sukuna, by expanding his simple domain, Kusakabe is able to create an impenetrable barrier around himself that allows him to instantly quick draw deflect any attack that comes his way. This simple domain is so immaculate, Sukuna's dismantle attacks, albeit low output, no matter how quickly they are fired or from what angle, cannot get through Kusakabe's defense. Even when Sukuna launches a slash without any tells, it's blocked. Kusakabe can then increase the effective radius of the domain and catch his opponent inside, at which point they are at the mercy of a disastrous slash onslaught from Kusakabe that is guaranteed to hit. This is not only a great counter to any of Kaigaku's potential area of effect attacks, it's also a great way for Kusakabe to work around this battle's speed disadvantage. Kusakabe has also endured multiple direct attacks from Sukuna, and even got into close quarters with the King of Curses himself. So not only is Kusakabe swinging way above what Kaigaku's capable of enduring, Kusakabe can clearly tank many of attacks from Kaigaku before giving out. Kaigaku does of course have unlimited stamina and regeneration, but without proof of being able to survive complete decapitation, Kusakabe would prove himself to be the better swordsman and use this victory to justify waiting in this room for everyone else to finish their fight, considering, you know, Kusakabe already put in a lot of work. He killed an Upper Moon. What more do you want from him? Cut to another side of the the Infinity Castle. Itadori Yuji and Higuruma Hiromi found themselves lumped together and have been encountering lesser demons left and right, fighting their way through the castle, when suddenly the castle starts to shake violently, the walls around them beginning to crumble. Yuji notices the ceiling crack and he calls out to Higuruma before a figure bursts through and slams into the floor between them. I knew I sensed someone with strong fighting spirit in the castle. The smoke clears. In comes Akaza, Upper Moon 3. I didn't think any of these sorcerers would actually be strong enough to take us on. Now I'm curious. Yuji and Higuruma would be on guard. Akaza, sensing their hostility, would begin his whole polite warrior shtick, assuring them Akaza only means to kill them in battle, not like in evil psychopathic way or anything. More of a way of the warrior kind of deal, you know? Akaza wants to test the strength of the two warriors, and depending on how they perform in battle, Akaza might even offer them the chance to become demons so they can fight together for all eternity. But Yuji and Higuruma have a job to do. They'll accept his challenge, but they don't have time for pleasantries. Now, when it comes to Upper Moon 3, Akaza shares much of the other top tier demons' physical stats and qualities, such as unlimited stamina, high speed regeneration, and vastly superior speed. Even Tanjiro and Giyu, two lightning timers themselves, can barely keep up with Akaza's movements. However, unlike his counterparts, Akaza strictly settles his feuds with hand-to-hand combat. Akaza's blood demon art, Destructive Death, mostly involves manipulating powerful shockwaves that extend forth from Akaza's already devastating physical attacks. Where most demons are capable of their maximum attack potential with large supernatural moves, Akaza is able to bring out large craters and massive building damage with his bare hands, and the force that's generated in the air from it. Akaza can casually kick Giyu through multiple rooms of the Infinity Castle and even overwhelm Giyu's Dead Calm, a specific, highly effective defensive water-breathing technique with over 100 omnidirectional blows in an instant. Akaza combines his overwhelming aggressive fighting style with the second side of Destructive Death, named Compass Needle. This essentially gives Akaza advanced precognition, similar to Maki Zenin's own extrasensory. Akaza is tapped so deeply into his opponent's aura that he can accurately predict and adapt to an enemy's movements before they've even occurred. As long as his opponent has a will to fight, Akaza will be able to sense that and take advantage of their weaknesses. Now, when it comes to martial arts, Akaza's best match is going to be Itadori Yuji. Despite never being formally trained, Yuji has displayed immaculate hand-to-hand combat feats. The Manji kick is the perfect example of Itadori's quick thinking, and the fact he was able to keep up with and even overwhelm a larger sparring opponent like Todo, despite his smaller size, a testament to Yuji's battle intelligence. Another aspect of this Todo spar is Yuji's adaptability to his environment, displayed even as far into the culling game, where Itadori attacks a flying opponent with a cursed energy-infused rock, or trying to hide his movements behind a barrage of thrown chairs and his own clothes while up against Higuruma. What is going to leave Yuji at a disadvantage against Akaza is Yuji's cog mentality, an indomitable will that, unlike Tanjiro, who in the original Infinity Castle was able to tap into something called the selfless state and turn his fighting spirit off, Yuji won't have that same luxury, and constantly will be getting clocked by Akaza while they're exchanging blows. And despite Itadori Yuji clearly being a character we can at minimum award similar speed to Maki Zenin and Sukuna, albeit being slightly slower than the two of them, I think it's clear by Akaza's ability to outmaneuver both Tanjiro and Giyu throughout their fight, not only will Yuji's movements be read, Akaza outright will just be moving faster than him. Now granted, even with Akaza's high damage output, Yuji has shown the ability to endure being blasted through multiple city blocks worth of damage and then some, surviving a black flash from a special grade like Mahito, and tanking multiple attacks from Ryoma and Sukuna at 20 fingers power level, including the fact that Yuji now has reverse curse technique, granting the sorcerer a healing factor similar to the demons, helping Itadori shrug off a decent amount of Akaza's incoming attacks should they hit. When it comes to Itadori Yuji doing damage to Akaza, on the other hand, Yuji should at the very least exceed what Akaza can bring in attack potency. Again, Yuji is casually dragging characters through buildings and demolishing city blocks while fighting in pedestrian areas, meaning a punch from Yuji, if hit in the right location, could bust right through Akaza's skull. And when you consider Itadori's consistent luck when it comes to landing Black Flash, this reality becomes even easier to believe. However, again, Itadori Yuji consistently being in the zone and landing Black Flashes will only further alert Akaza to danger thanks to Compass Needle. Itadori Yuji, since his growth during the Shinjuku Showdown, has also shown aptitude for blood manipulation as well as Sukuna's curse technique Dismantle. Although Yuji cannot use convergence on his own, the technique required to compress and export blood from the body, Yuji can canonically force his projectile projected blood to burst and cause external damage to an opponent. Yuji's version of this mantle requires him to trace an outline of the object he wishes to cut while maintaining contact with it. His curse energy then cuts down that line and would have been strong enough to cleave through Sukuna's ankle had the attack not been interrupted. These techniques help Itadori add variety to his fighting style, despite neither of them offering direct win cons against Akaza. The real issue is, regardless of who you think would eventually come out on top in a 1v1, Akaza is one of the first instances of a demon evolving through adversity and surpassing their weakness of decapitation. Even when Akaza's head is taken off by Tanjiro, the body continues to fight back, his desire to become stronger growing into an obsession that develops Akaza into something even more monstrous than a demon. And this is where Higuruma Hiromi comes in, the true deciding factor in the fight. I haven't talked much about Higuruma because the truth is, when it comes to the real fight, Yuji's much better suited for it. It's impressive that Higuruma was able to adapt to sorcery in such a short amount of time and keep up combatively with a Yuji who had no cursed energy. Higuruma's shape-shifting gavel and cursed energy control definitely make him a strong grade 1 fighter alone, and being able to put Yuji back into a corner is no small feat. However, his performance in the Sukuna battle shows despite Higuruma's massive potential, he lacks combat experience, making him a weaker link in bigger scale fights like this. Even though Higuruma is able to survive building, destroying, dismantle attacks from Sukuna, and even learn reverse curse technique for regeneration in his last moments, up against a martial arts master like Akaza, in real combat, Higuruma stands no chance and would need to be protected by Yuji in this 2v1. However, what makes Higuruma such an important participant in this fight are the special conditions of Higuruma's domain expansion. Domain expansion is a Jujutsu sorcerer's ultimate move, in which, by creating an inescapable barrier around their opponent and casting an innate curse technique within, the sorcerer creates a one-hit kill attack that becomes impossible to dodge. In Higuruma's case, by foregoing the short hit kill, he can create a domain where anyone trapped inside must follow all the rules set in place. Being a lawyer, Higuruma's domain deadly sentencing resembles a courtroom, surrounding everyone caught in the domain with guillotines and putting everyone at the podium. A conjured Shikigami named Judge Man holds full control within the territory. Judge Man, after selecting a target, finds a crime that the person committed at one point in their life, and depending on the severity of the crime, Judge Man either convicts the enemy or finds them innocent. While the court is in session, no violence is permitted, forcing everyone inside the domain to accept whatever results Judge Man delivers. If a victim is found guilty, there are two options: confiscation, where the accused is punished by specifically stealing something important to them. If they have a cursed weapon, it's stolen. If not, their cursed technique. If the target has no technique, all of their cursed energy is taken away. And if the crime is even more deserving, Judge Man can charge someone with the death penalty, where Higuruma is bestowed with a sword of complete light that, upon contact, without exception, kills the one charged with the crime. With Itadori Yuji serving as a great distraction, engaging Akaza in one-on-one combat, Higuruma could cast Domain and trap the upper moon when Akaza least expects it. Because of the domain's large encompassing range and its quick activation time, it's not impossible for Akaza to get caught within. Itadori Yuji is also strong enough to hold on to Akaza and keep him stuck in the range for the domain to take place. And considering Higuruma's domain employs no guaranteed kill effect and even forbids violence entirely, you could argue deadly sentencing wouldn't even trigger Akaza's spidey sense. Now, without summarizing all of Akaza's backstory here, let's just say it would be pretty easy to attach a harsh judgment to the upper moon, despite having one of the more tragic backstories. Being a demon in general, especially upper moon rank, implies centuries of slaughter and debauchery. Even as a human, Akaza committed numerous crimes, some albeit justified, but crimes nonetheless. And the reason I try to emphasize how many countless murders and crimes Akaza participated in is because Judge Man selects the accused trial at random. So because Akaza's long history of being a demon vastly overwhelms his short human life, that also wasn't that kosher. It just means there's a much higher percentage Akaza's gonna get handed the worst possible sentence. Now, when it comes to the confiscation, Akaza being a demon from another anime most likely implies cursed energy isn't his source of power. So you can either say it outright doesn't work on Akaza, or if we're equalizing power systems, the demon would lose his blood demon art entirely. But again, Akaza is just a hands merchant anyway. His overall attack potency might be reduced, but Akaza would definitely still be a threat. Higuruma and Yuji would have to stake all their luck on the death penalty, putting Higuruma into play as the major asset, considering even if Akaza can best them in combat, it only takes one accidental graze or touch for the sword of execution to immediately claim Akaza's entire existence. This might be the only way they can kill Akaza after the upper moon conquers decapitation. situation. Now, I do think narratively, not only would Higuruma's domain force Akaza to face his human memories, something that ultimately leads Akaza to seppuku in the original Infinity Castle, it might also provide Yuji the extra edge he needs to land a killing blow. Whether Higuruma passes the sword to Yuji, which is canonically shown to be possible, or Higuruma and Yuji work together as a tag team to fight Akaza to the death, the two should eventually open him up to at least one stab. And one good stab is all they really need. So whether you want to say, narratively, Akaza's character leads him to eliminate himself again before he loses the last bit of humanity he's got left, or Yuji and Higuruma with death penalty are able to pull the victory out of their struggle, ultimately, I think Akaza would lose this 2v1 just like he did in the original Infinity Castle. After the loss of Kaigaku and Akaza, we're back to the present. Doma would pause his fight with Maki briefly to mourn his quote-unquote best friend Akaza. What a guy. Anyway, skipping ahead, we need two sorcerers to replace Mitsuri Kanroji and Iguru Obanai, who both encounter the demon responsible for manipulating the maze of the Infinity Castle itself, the Biwa playing demon, Upper Moon 4 Nakime. The next best duo I can come up with, since the lovers Maki and Yuta are both preoccupied, is the absolute bromance formed between Kinji Hakari and Kashimo Hajime. Both of them, in their own scuffle, displayed numerous intense feats of massive attack power, durability, and speed, easily placing them on a level similar to heavy hitters like Maki or Yuta Okkotsu, without getting too in-depth with all the stat differences between these characters specifically. Kashimo and Hakari were essentially bare-knuckle volleying an entire cargo container back and forth with each other, and they both survived the massive electrical explosion Kashimo created underwater in their fight that at the very least would have blown multiple city blocks to hell and back if taking place above ground. Kashimo's lightning bolt attack also blew Panda's defense-oriented sister to smithereens, and this is the same Panda that absolutely tanked Ultimate Mechamaru's Ultra Cannon that destroyed massive parts of the forest they were in. And considering Nakime isn't exactly a power-type demon, when it comes to fighting, the simple Biwa player stands no chance. But the problem is getting their hands on her. Mitsuri describes Nakime's blood demon art as essentially controlling the entire structure of the castle as if they were Nakime's own hands and feet. Nakime is easily able to outmaneuver the demon slayers with randomly appearing doors that are strong enough to block the two Hashira's blows, changing hallways, pillars, or structures to alter their opponent's course of attack, crush them between buildings, or even transport them to different locations entirely. The most terrifying result is the chance of being dropped down into the abyss of the Infinity Castle dimension with no structures left to grab onto, initiating a forever fall that leads to certain death no matter how durable you are, considering Nakime can just keep an opponent falling as long as she needs to generate the necessary velocity. This is why it's important Hakari and Kashimo help each other in this fight. Similar to Mitsuri and Obanai, one wrong move could mean death. Despite Nakime's low battle stats, she is at least fast enough to stall two Hashira level demon slayers for a long time and remain completely untouched, able to react and outmaneuver every single attack thrown at her, even point blank strikes. And what really makes the fight difficult for the two of them, neither of them have many long range attack options to aid them in battle. Kashimo indeed has a can't miss lightning bolt strike. However, in order to execute that technique, Kashimo must first make physical contact with the opponent and mark them with the positive charge. Kashimo's weapon can be used as a lightning rod that he can place his opponent in between, but with Nakime's power to just change the environment faster than Kashimo's lightning, it's unlikely Kashimo would be able to set this up properly. And considering Kashimo won't go all out or use his curse technique against Nakime, because if anything, the changing of the universes would imply Kashimo saving it directly for Muzan, it's actually possible Nakime could press the two sorcerers in a deadlock, just as she does Mitsuri and Obanai, until someone arrives to break up the status quo. However, there is one way to stop the Infinity Castle madness, and that's if Hakari can catch Nakime inside of his domain expansion. What benefits Hakari and Kashimo would be the creation of the domain's barrier, as it would completely pull Nakime out of a realm she controls and throw her inside a pocket dimension of Hakari's design. If Hakari and Kashimo are able to pull this off, despite the crazy twists and turns of Nakime's castle shuffling, they immediately win. Nakime would be completely defenseless, and that Biwa is not helping her one bit boxing with Hakari and Kashimo. There is the whole entire jackpot ability that goes along with Hakari's domain idle death gamble, but to be honest, the pachinko roll wouldn't even start before she got dusted. Obviously, this would immediately destroy the Infinity Castle and throw everyone outside of the void, pitting everyone that has survived up to this point against Muzan himself. But before we get to that big finale, we've got one more fight to cover. Just a few moments before Hakari and Kashimo defeat Nakime, our perspective would cut back to the three remaining party members, Yuta Okkotsu, Ino, Takuma, and Choso. As they hurried through the castle looking for Muzan, Choso more so really worried about reconnecting back up with Yuji, the Infinity Castle would shift rapidly due to the ensuing battle between Luck, Thunder, and Biwa. One of those flying pillars catching Okkotsu off guard and launching him into a separate section of the castle. Crashing through the wall, Yuta would find himself in a temple-style audience room, pillars with candles lighting up the dark shroud of the arena. Okkotsu would look around and immediately sense he wasn't alone. Between the wooden barriers that shaped the odd landscape of the room emerged Kokushibo, Upper Moon 1. The mere presence alone of the toughest demon instantly making Okkotsu take up his blade on guard. Yuta would steel his resolve, realizing that by some oddity of fate he came upon Upper Moon 1, the worst threat possible. Yuta would accept the responsibility of eliminating Kokushibo, so none of his other friends have to. Readying for battle, Kokushibo, almost having deja vu with the original timeline, would compliment Yuta on his emotional strength, being able to face an admirable foe with confidence. Yuta Okkotsu and Kokushibo would engage in battle, and the first thing that Yuta would notice is just how fast Kokushibo truly is. The first Upper Moon shows perception blitzing speed against members of his own rank like Akaza or Doma, second in speed only to Muzan himself. When battling 3 Hashira in the original Infinity Castle timeline, the Demon Slayers are just barely hanging on by a thread, parrying Kokushibo's massive range of moon-breathing attacks. Kokushibo is not only moving at extreme speeds, he's striking with all the same power of Doma's maximum attack potency, if not more, letting Kokushibo casually demolish the large-scale arena he fights in with simple swipes of his flesh blade. And while Yuta Okkotsu's still pretty fast in his own right, as he can competently exchange blows with Ryoma and Sukuna, based on the fight between Sukuna and Maki, where the two of them are shown air-stepping, Choso admits they're competing on a level that no one else is capable of. If we are to assume this Maki Zenin is faster than Yuta, it's safe to clock his speed somewhere lower than Maki, yet still comparable to Itadori Yuji, based on how the two of them were somewhat matched in their short fight. If we're considering Doma's faster than Maki already, and Kokushibo is moving even quicker than Doma can perceive, the speed advantage here is unmistakable. Thankfully though, Yuta Okkotsu isn't a pushover. Yuta is at least comparable in durability to Ishigori Ryu's maximum attack output, if not more. Ishigori is the character with the largest curse energy output in all of Jujutsu Kaisen, and is shown to demolish multiple large city blocks with a mere hyper beam of his own cursed energy named Granite Blast. This attack is caught inside of Yuta Okkotsu's hand and deflected twice, and as stated before, when releasing Yuta's own cursed energy, he can create attack power equal to, or possibly even greater than this. Kokushibo's attacks, while extremely powerful, even at their most generous estimations, wouldn't hit harder than Granite Blast. Yuta himself also has reverse curse technique, and is also one of the only sorcerers that can output that healing factor, meaning if Ino and Choso do eventually show up, if they get hurt, Yuta can restore them to full power, considering the two of them would at best be massively outmatched in combat potential, despite Piercing Blood, Supernova, or any of Ino's auspicious beast summons probably having more attack power than a Demon Slayer's Sword Slash. They would be way too slow to catch Kokushibo, and considering the Upper Moon canonically is able to stand in one location and whip disastrous maelstroms of moon-breathing attacks throughout the whole arena, it's gonna be pretty chaotic for them to fight back. Choso and Ino are definitely durable enough to withstand a moon-breathing slash, but they would absolutely not survive in a dragged-out deadlock. Kokushibo, as all demons, has unlimited stamina and some of the best regeneration out of all the Upper Moons. Even if these offhanded attacks from Ino and Choso poked through Kokushibo's defenses, they can be reversed with healing. Being a former Demon Slayer, one from the original generation that unlocked his Demon Slayer mark, Kokushibo is also able to make use of the transparent world, essentially X-ray vision that acts as a way for Kokushibo to accurately assess an opponent's strengths, weaknesses, as well as accurately predict their actions based on muscle and joint movements. Combined with the transparent world, Kokushibo's flesh blades and demon art are able to adapt, change shape, and attack from any direction required. Kokushibo can even fire moon breathing without a tell. Not that his overwhelming agility didn't make him hard enough to interpret for the sorcerers. And right now you're saying, no operator, that's not fair. You're only putting 3 characters up against Kokushibo. The Demon Slayers had 4. And I don't really think anybody needs the reminder that Yuta Okkotsu is always a package deal. Yuta is accompanied by his guardian Shikigami Rika Orimoto, the spirit of Yuta's childhood friend. Once a special grade curse spirit, Rika has canonically shown the fighting capacity to exchange punches back and forth with the same Ishigori Ryu we just spoke about, as well as launch cursed energy beams on her own accord that can rival Ishigori's Granite Blast. These feats feats, as well as her ability to keep up with both Yuji Itadori and Yuta himself, mean she's definitely as able-bodied as any special grade threat in Jujutsu Kaisen, with minor exceptions. Yuta and Rika as a team, whether Rika's partially manifested or not, are both capable of pushing through Kokushibo's onslaught of attacks and making their own attempts on his head. Yuta is deflecting large cockroach storms from Kurorushi with his own cursed energy slash, an attack even he admitted would pose a serious threat. So moon breathing would be nothing for Yuta to deflect, whether the direction changing or speed of the moon breathing slashes threw Okkotsu off guard or not. Yuta also has one of the highest reserves of cursed energy in the series, even more so than Gojo Satoru in total amount, meaning Yuta can easily keep up with Kokushibo's stamina and healing to push through the slash storm. If Okkotsu Yuta puts on his cursed ring, fully synchronizing with Rika and unlocking his copy ability, the fight becomes a lot more fair as well. By activating Yuta's curse technique for a 5-minute interval, he's able to break his cursed energy limits and gain access to 6 different curse techniques that Yuta's stolen from other sorcerers. Rika is also significantly buffed in attack and durability, meaning she becomes more of a threat as well. Yuta should potentially be able to see 2 seconds into the future or more after he fills the conditions for Charles Bernard's precognition, or traverse the sky, stretching it as a surface to deflect Kokushibo's moon breathing and landing piercingly powerful strikes with sky manipulation. Or at its best, Okkotsu could even summon the slicing strength of Ryomen Sukuna's cleave to dice right through Kokushibo's neck with no resistance, perfectly adjusted to the exact sharpness required for the job. Yuta also has a domain expansion of his own, Authentic Mutual Love, where Yuta can trap Kokushibo and cut down his range. With Yuta's 6 different techniques, he has the freedom to change the sure hit of the domain to fit whatever works best. This gives Yuta the guaranteed win condition of raining endless cleaves on Kokushibo to eviscerate the upper moon entirely. Or, more humanely, Jacob's ladder could purify Kokushibo's tormented soul with light from heaven. Okkotsu has also mastered his domain expansion at a high enough level to specify who the sure hit affects, meaning Choso and Ino can even enter the territory as well and back Yuta up where they can. In the original Infinity Castle, it took the combined effort of 4 demon slayers to muster the strength to chop off Kokushibo's head, and Kokushibo was one of the lucky demons to potentially ascend into a higher being. Yet when faced with the ugly results of his actions, Kokushibo folds and accepts his loss to those who defeat him. Even if Upper Moon 1 is able to survive decapitation, the preceding transformation that occurs would either be stopped by Kokushibo himself or still wiped from existence by Okkotsu Yuta's domain. So regardless of how Kokushibo meets his end, Yuta Okkotsu would ultimately be keeping his promise about killing Upper Moon 1, just as he does with every promise he makes in Jujutsu Kaisen. Back again in the present, Hakari Kinji's domain shatters upon vanquishing Upper Moon 4. So too would the entire Infinity Castle crumble and fall, instantly teleporting every denizen of the castle to their original location, the tattered, broken ruins of the Jujutsu Director's manor. On Jujutsu Kaisen's side, the remaining sorcerers, besides Hakari and Kashimo, would be as follows: Yuji and Higuruma accounted for, Okkotsu Yuta, and thanks to his efforts, Choso and Ina. But not only would Mei and Wee be nowhere to be found, Maki Zenin would be over on the Demon Slayer side, but not because of betrayal, only it's because Maki's corpse is slowly being devoured by the surprisingly still alive Doma. Mei and Wee, upon facing the insurmountable odds of defeating Upper Moon 2, teleported away to another country, leaving Maki for dead. Ironically, leaving the final battle for the sorcerers as the King of Demons and his servant that manipulates ice. What are the odds of that? Now, keeping in line with how the characters would act, not having a single care for the modern sorcerers, and finally seeing the apple of his eye, Muzan Kibutsuji, Kashimo Hajime would activate his curse technique Mythical Beast Amber on sight with Muzan Kibutsuji in his sights. A one-time use ability that converts Kashimo's cursed energy as well as his entire body into electricity itself. The God of Thunder instantly ramming into Muzan with a blitzing pounce, almost like Thunder Breathing's Godspeed, launching the two of them far away where they can't be interrupted. Doma, whose first instinct would be to turn around and give chase, would immediately hear behind him, "Sorry, but I've got a promise to keep." The destroyed manor being replaced by a modern train station, a location that would baffle the Upper Moon like no other as he attempts to comprehend the massive info dump that Akari's domain Idle Death Gamble gives its target upon entering. And I bet you all thought I'd let these two off the hook with that easy side battle, and you thought wrong. From the outside, the remaining members of the Jujutsu Sorcerers would mourn for Maki while they await the results of what's about to take place. Hakari Kinji versus Doma. After the brief info dump, Doma, realizing he was trapped and couldn't escape, would begin his whole polite facade again. But in respect for the death of his kohai, Hakari would not mince words. A quick punch would burst through Doma's jaw. "Sorry, I don't respect people who kill my kohai." A muffled laugh would begin to form from Doma's slowly regenerating head. Well, I guess I can't really afford to waste time either. Doma's two fans draw forth, the icy chill already emanating throughout Hakari's domain. Just like Maki, Hakari is more than capable of breaking through Doma's defenses with nothing more than his bare hands. And by being trapped inside Idle Death Gamble, Hakari can keep Doma's speed contained to a smaller area. The only advantage Hakari can't take away from Doma is his incredible Blood Demon art, which, similar to Maki Zenin, can very easily begin to overwhelm a solo opponent. Doma's ability to freeze the body internally ignores all conventional durability, and what makes Doma truly terrifying are his ice clones. Even on his own territory, Hakari can easily become surrounded by ice attacks with nowhere to dodge. However, the Master of Luck wouldn't worry staring down these impossible odds. In fact, Hakari's been feeling pretty hot since taking down Nakime, and getting the chance to avenge his junior would skyrocket Hakari to a level of fever unlike anything felt before. Because Hakari and Kashimo easily dispatched Nakime, Hakari ended up rolling nothing at all in that previous domain. His heart just wasn't in it. But now, the fever is telling Hakari this pull is the one. Jackpot, baby. If we're being completely honest, base Hakari would unfortunately meet the same end as Maki. But Jackpot Hakari is what everyone uses to scale anyway, and it just makes all narrative sense for Hakari to jackpot off rip here. So let's just roll with that. One of the main reasons Hakari was the perfect opponent for Arame in Jujutsu Kaisen, another reincarnated sorcerer that also uses large-scale encompassing ice attacks, is Jackpot's special ability to automatically heal Hakari with reverse curse technique with no limits. For 4 minutes and 11 seconds after landing Jackpot, the surge of curse energy Hakari has flowing through him not only boosts his physical capabilities, it's an endless source of recovery. Hakari loses multiple limbs to Arame in their fight, but thanks to the auto regen, Hakari is able to shatter the ice without worry, as everything will immediately grow back. In fact, it recovers fast enough for Hakari to counterattack in the very next motion. This indifference to pain and instant recovery lets Hakari take a much more aggressive berserker-style approach to battle, doing his best to stay as close as possible to an opponent and keep the pressure on, with the greatest benefit being, once the time limit is up, Hakari's rejuvenated and able to cast Domain again to start the roulette over. And once Hakari's on a roll, frankly, it's pretty damn hard to stop it. Jackpot Hakari could freely dismantle the ice clones without fear of taking critical damage. His regeneration is even capable of healing his brain faster than lightning could fry it. Nothing Doma does inside or out will fully kill Hakari. And considering his striking strength should far surpass anything Doma can physically handle, Hakari will continually burst his way through the crowd to get to the upper moon, having all the strength necessary to punch directly through giant ice-bodied Sattva and pull Doma's head clean off his neck. Even as they fight outside of the domain with Doma's full speed advantage, Hakari's invincibility will ultimately become too much for Doma to handle. As Doma's thoughts fade, he wonders if he too will be able to evolve. Unfortunately, this is not the case. Even wanting to kill Hakari and save Master Muzan isn't enough to muster any sense of feeling in his heart. But as Doma fades away into the black, a familiar side offers to guide him to hell. Maki Zenin, the heartless curse of her family, forgives Doma, and they cross over into the fire together. Doma just happy he doesn't have to be emotionless alone. Both of them ready for whatever judgment awaits them for the sins they've committed. Meanwhile, not too far away, the electrified Kashimo would zap the King of Curses high above an open field in the forest. Holding Muzan up by his face, Kashimo would throw him to the dirt below. Kashimo looks down at the squirming Demon King, who would roar loudly in denial of being underestimated, treated like a common dog. Did you know he is the king of demons? Muzan's body would begin to twist and contort, becoming a truly vile creature, his exterior fitting the black abyss that was his soul. Muzan would emerge from the transformation in his final form, countless flesh tendrils whipping around the area at high speeds, and large damaging energetic shockwaves charge in hopes of debilitating Kashimo entirely, just as Muzan did to the Hashira before. The problem for Muzan is that if Kashimo does consider him his true target, Mythical Beast Amber again is a curse technique very similar to the 8 Gates. In exchange for Kashimo's life, his flesh itself becomes lightning, and by converting all of his curse energy into electricity, Kashimo gains full control over every phenomenon that electricity is capable of producing. Radiation waves, frequency shock waves, even summoning summoning his lightning bolt attack without the need for laying down a positive charge beforehand. Kashimo also gains enhanced reflexes and agility thanks to the electrified signals being amplified in his brain. The King of Curses is still stronger than all of the upper moons before him, and supposedly even faster than Kokushibo. Kashimo will be more alert than usual and better capable of dodging incoming attacks, but Muzan will still be able to defend himself easily with extremely quick tendril slashes and reaction time. Crowd control is exactly how Muzan survives against 5 Hashira at once, putting them to the very brink with every potential attack being a threat on their lives. Muzan can also survive decapitation, making him essentially immortal. Through the transparent world, Gyomei identifies Muzan as having 7 hearts and 5 brains, each of which capable of being shifted to whatever part of the body is safest at the time. Muzan has also canonically been able to separate himself into 1,800 pieces, and is able to recover even if only one of those fragments remain. Muzan's unlimited stamina, never-ending regeneration, and ability to cause just as much, if not more damage than any of the upper moons make him an impossible opponent for Kashimo in close quarters. Muzan's tried and true only threat is the sun, and Muzan is also capable of inflicting a lethal poison on his enemies through his blood, destroying a person's cells internally instead of turning them into a demon. This means it is in Kashimo's best interest not to get caught by any of Muzan's attacks, regardless of if they're capable of lethally wounding him on first contact or not. However, because Mythical Beast Amber vastly increases Kashimo's options in battle, the Thunder God wouldn't even have to get close to the King of Demons. Thanks to being able to irradiate objects with his cursed energy, as well as launch his lightning bolt attacks without the need for a marker, Kashimo can induce massive scale explosions all around Muzan that are more than capable of obliterating the demon's flesh. And considering he can manipulate all phenomenon of electricity at the most basic level, create ultraviolet light, potentially powerful enough to actually fry Muzan Kibutsuji and mimic the effect of the sun. Even if you want to argue Muzan's immortality would allow him to reform, no matter how much Kashimo overpowers him, death by ultraviolet rays, Muzan's one big weakness, is a pretty handy tool for Mythical Beast Amber to provide to Kashimo. Now, I think it's fair to say, if this was base Kashimo, the fight would be very different, but Mythical Beast Amber provides Kashimo everything he needs to overcome Muzan. But even if you were to argue with me and say Kashimo lost, Muzan Kibutsuji is definitely not walking out of round 2, which would feature all of Jujutsu Kaisen's heavy hitters, and they would certainly beat the brakes off Muzan till sunrise. So I think it's safe to say, despite the sad loss of Maki and Mei Mei and Wee Wee becoming permanent Malaysian citizens, the Jujutsu Kaisen cast could definitely be able to handle the Infinity Castle arc in full. What other kind of crazy matchups would you like to see next? Check out Demon Slayer in Shibuya if you haven't seen it, or one of my other videos here on the end screen to continue your binge, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next one. Peace.